This is the last time it was the religious preface. This is the preface to Moderation and Belief by Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. For the, what's the book called? Al-Iqtisam fi al-I'tiqad. So let us begin our discussion by stating the title of the book and describe its divisions into introductions, parts, and chapters. As for the title of the book, it is Moderation and Belief. As for its organization, it consists of 4 introductions, serving as prologues and forewords, and 4 treatises, serving as aims and objectives. The first introduction on showing that this science is one of the most important, the first introduction on showing that this science is one of the important matters for the religion. The science of which al-Ghazali speaks throughout this book is the science of kalam, which is theology. Sometimes it's referred to as scholastic theology, and though rarely as philosophical theology. Scholastic theology is a reasonable translation, since some jurists discuss theological issues, although they were not considered practitioners of kalam. On the other hand, kalam is more generic than the phrase philosophical theology suggests. I prefer to translate it as simply theology. A theologian is a mutakalim, and theologians are mutakalimun or mutakalimin. Okay. The second introduction on showing that it is not important for all Muslims, but for a specific group of them. The third introduction on showing that it is one of the collective and not one of the individual obligations. So, fard kifaya instead of fard al-ayn. According to Islamic law, an individual obligation fard al-ayn is a religious obligation incumbent upon every individual Muslim who meets certain conditions. For example, fasting during Ramadan is such an obligation, a collective obligation. Fard kifaya, on the other hand, is an obligation that devolves upon the Muslim community as a whole, and not upon every member of the community who meets certain conditions. For instance, the funeral prayer is a collective obligation. If some members of the Muslim community perform the prayer, then the community as a whole has met its obligation, even if most members of the community might not have participated in the prayer. The fourth introduction on explaining the methods of proof that I employ in this book. As for the intended treatises, there are 4. Most of them are concerned with theoretical reflection on God, exalted as He. For if we reflect on the world, we do not reflect on it insofar as it is a world, body, heaven, and earth, but insofar as it is the work of God. And if we reflect on the Prophet, we do not reflect on him insofar as he is a man honorable, knowledgeable, and righteous, but insofar as he is the messenger of God. And if we reflect on his sayings, we don't reflect on them insofar as they are sayings, addresses, and explanations, but insofar as they are information from God and conveyed by Him. Thus, there is no reflection but on God, and there is nothing sought but God. All parts of this science are confined to theoretical reflection on the essence of God, on the attributes of God, on the acts of God, and on the messenger of God and what he related in the way of informing about God. They are therefore 4 treatises. The first treatise, theoretical reflection on the sense of God, exalted as He. We show in it that He exists, that He is eternal anteriorly, that He is eternal posteriorly, that He is not a substance, not a body, not a mode. Not a substance. By substance, jawhar, al-Ghazali means here extended substance. Like most theologians and philosophers, al-Ghazali would be willing to describe God as a non-extended substance, if substance simply refers to that which subsists in itself, and not in the subject. Jawhar. And not by a body, not a mode. Let's see what he means mode. Mode is my translation of arad. When it is contrasted with substance, jawhar, that is, when it is used to mean that which does not subsist in itself, but subsists in subject. See note on translation for further discussion of this choice. Okay. Not bounded by a limit, not specified by a direction. That He can be seen. The traditional doctrine is that God will be seen by His righteous servants in the hereafter. This doctrine is based on literal interpretations of certain Quranic verses and sayings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The following Quranic verse is an example of these statements. Faces on that day will be radiant, looking toward their Lord, and that he can be seen as well as known, and that he is one. These are then 10 propositions that we establish in this treatise, God willing. The second treatise on the attributes of God, exalted is He, we show in it that He is living, knower, powerful, willer, hearer, seer, sayer, and that He is endowed with life, knowledge, power, will, hearing, sight, and speech. We state the characteristics of these attributes and their necessary consequences. Their necessary consequences can be understood as referring to the divine attributes or to their characteristics. The Arabic original, وَنَذْكُرْ أَحْكَامْ هَذِهِ الصِّفَاتِ. Why don't they write it in Arabic? They write it in English letters. أَوَازِمَهَا Miha contains the same ambiguity as the English. If it is their necessary consequences, and then it refers to ahkam, characteristics. Ahkam, I thought it was rulings. The akhlaq would be, I don't know. And if it is lawazimaha, then it refers to as-sifat, the attributes. As it is standard in most Arabic texts, the short vowels are not written, except for the Jeddah edition. All the editions in my possession do not distinguish between lawazimaha and lawazimiha. The Jeddah edition selects lawazimiha and hence makes their necessary consequences refer to the characteristics. I have no knowledge whether this choice is based on a manuscript or is due to the editor. It should also be noted that both ahkam and sifat are feminine. So we state the characteristics of these attributes and their necessary consequences, and which characteristics are shared among them, and in which characteristics they differ, and that these attributes are additional to the essence, eternal and subsisting in the essence. And that is not possible that any of the attributes is an occurrent. Occurrent is translation of hadith. Yes, that's actually a good translation. Occurrent. The third treatise is on the acts of God, exalted is He. In it there are 7 propositions. They are: it is not incumbent upon God to assign obligations, nor to create, nor to reward for fulfilling the obligations, nor to care for the well-being of His servants. Nor is it impossible for Him to assign obligations that exceeds the ability of the one obligated. Nor is it incumbent upon Him to punish for committing sins. Nor is it impossible for Him to send prophets. Rather, all of these are contingent. Contingent is my translation of the verb yajuz. Is noun and adjective are jaiz, which means permissible, possible, or contingent. Possible, so I've heard it before. By saying that God's acts are contingent, al-ghalali means that God can do them if He wills, or refrain from them if He wills. At the outset of this treatise, there is an explanation of the meaning of obligatory, good and bad. The fourth treatise on the messengers of God and what was related by His messenger, may God bless him and grant him peace, regarding the resurrection and congregation, paradise and hellfire, intercession and the torment of the grave, the balance and the path. In it there are 4 chapters. The first chapter on establishing the prophethood of Muhammad, may God bless him and give him peace. The second chapter on what is related by him regarding the affairs of the hereafter. The third chapter on the imamate and its requirements. The fourth chapter on explaining the canon for imputing infidelity to heretical sects. So that's the preface. Then the first introduction starts.